Welcome to the SPS Seminar Series. Today we have Dr. Paul Kirby, who will be talking on governing sexual violence at the Foreign Office. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Could you give us a brief overview of the topic that you'll be talking on today?
Yeah, so my talk is about something called the Preventing Sexual Violence Initiative, which was launched by William Hague when he was Foreign Secretary of the UK government way back in May of 2012. It's been going for the last 4 years as an attempt by the UK government to make a substantial difference to the levels of conflict-related sexual violence around the world through documentation and investigation, through expanding international expertise, through improving international cooperation, and things of that nature. So I'm interested both in the question of how successful that has been on its own terms, and also the question of whether it represents some kind of shift or transformation in global security practices.
Okay. Could you tell us how you came to specialise in this area of work?
Well, I did my doctoral work, my PhD, on wartime sexual violence and on the different ways that it can be explained in feminist and gender theory, primarily, in the discipline of international relations, so international politics focus. And as I was finishing that work, the initiative was beginning. And because my thesis had been quite theoretical and in some ways abstract, I was interested to trace through a kind of concrete policy intervention to see how that worked, how it functioned, how it failed, and understand the mechanisms of policy in a better way. So it seemed very opportune to take on the UK initiative as an example, and so I've been following it pretty much since it began as a distinct research project.
Okay. So, of course, there are quite a lot of difficult issues associated with this topic. Could you tell us about some of the more positive contributions that have come out of this field in recent years?
Well, the size of the field has certainly expanded rapidly, I would say, in the last decade. So the amount of research there is now quite vast, especially with reference to different kinds of cases, different kinds of victims and perpetrators. And so even though the topic is depressing, I think we know more about the issue than we ever have. And the lines of communication between researchers and policymakers, although not perfect, are certainly better than they were. So in some ways, the very fact that I'm studying the initiative, the very fact that it exists, is an example of some progress. And certainly there's been a proliferation of the kinds of actors and agencies in the last 5 or 10 years who have begun to take gender violence and sexual violence seriously, both domestically and abroad in conflict situations. So in a way, the fact that we're talking about it so much is a sign of progress, even though the topic itself is not particularly pleasant.
Yeah. And in your opinion, what would you consider some of the issues that are still overlooked in this area and that need more work?
Well, one in particular I think would be to better understand why some interventions work or whether any of the interventions work. I don't mean interventions in the sense of peacekeeping or military interventions, but even such attempts to change opinions, to change the ideas around gender that might exist in different times and places, to improve survivor services. There's a lot of activity and there's quite a lot of spending in this area internationally, but I'm not sure that we always have as good a sense of what's best practice as we could, and what really works to achieve gender equality or transform patriarchal norms. So more research on what works would be very good.
Thank you for your time, and we look forward to hearing more in your talk later.
Thank you very much.